Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Space stations smell weird. Not bad, necessarily. Just weird. Like recycled air that's been through too many filters, mixed with the faint metallic tang of hull plating and whatever cleaning solution the maintenance bots use that week. Add in the biological signatures of 24 different species living in close quarters, and you get an olfactory experience that no amount of atmospheric regulation can quite eliminate. Tamsin had been on enough stations to know this, but it still hit her wrong every time she woke from hypersleep. That and the headache. Always the headache. She groaned, peeling herself off the cryopod's padded interior and immediately regretting consciousness. Her joints popped in sequence, shoulders, elbows, spine, like a biological xylophone warming up for a performance nobody asked for. "Welcome to Galactic Conservation Station Ashmaran," a pleasant automated voice chirped. "Local time is 0600 hours. Your assigned quarters are on Deck 8, Section—" Yeah, Tamsin muttered, waving vaguely at the air. "I'll find it." She wouldn't. She never did. But admitting that to a computer felt like accepting defeat before the mission even started. And Tamsin had a policy about that sort of thing. The station's central hub was already buzzing when she emerged from the arrival wing, still wearing the rumpled jumpsuit she'd traveled in. Various species moved through the corridors with purpose. Quellans with their multiple arms carrying data pads, a pair of Metherian engineers arguing in clicks and whistles, something that looked like a very official jellyfish floating past in a containment sphere. Nobody paid Tamsin any attention. Humans were common enough in this sector, unremarkable enough that she could blend right in, which was exactly how she liked it, right up until someone needed her for something impossible. And based on the message that had yanked her out of a comfortable research posting 3 systems away, this was definitely going to be impossible. "You're the human?" Tamsin turned. A Quellan stood behind her, tall, deep violet skin, 4 arms currently crossed in what was either impatience or judgment. Possibly both. Her eyes, all 6 of them, blinked in a cascade pattern that Tamsin's tired brain couldn't quite track. "Guilty," Tamsin said. "You must be the welcoming committee." "I am Dr. Brill Nara, Chief Medical Officer of this station." The Quellan's tone suggested she had better things to do than collect wayward humans from the arrivals deck. "You were supposed to report directly to Medical Bay upon arrival." "Was I?" Tamsin patted her pockets, pretending to search for something. "Must have missed that memo. Hypersleep brain, you know how it is." Dr. Brill Nara's expression, or what Tamsin assumed was an expression, given the anatomical differences, did not soften. "Follow me. We're already behind schedule." They moved through the station at a pace that suggested Dr. Brill Nara either didn't care if Tamsin kept up or was actively testing whether she could. The corridors blurred together. Same sterile white walls, same soft lighting, same occasional potted plant that someone thought made the place feel homier, but really just made it feel like a hospital pretending not to be one. "So," Tamsin said, jogging slightly to match the doctor's stride, "your message was light on details. Something about a patient nobody else can help? A gross oversimplification, but accurate enough." Dr. Brill Nara didn't slow down. "We have a juvenile Ralmoth in critical condition. He's refusing all sustenance, all medical intervention, and all social contact. Multiple specialists have attempted to engage with him. All have failed." "Ralmoth?" Tamsin's brain, still sluggish from cryo, tried to pull up the relevant data. That's the apex predator species from Ashmarin, right? Thought they were extinct. Functionally extinct, Dr. Brilnara corrected. Fewer than 200 individuals remain in the wild. This cub is valuable, both genetically and symbolically. Tamsin caught the pause, the weight behind it. But you didn't call me here because he's valuable. You called me because he's dying. The doctor stopped walking. They'd reached a door marked Medical Bay, Isolation Ward 3. She turned to face Tamsin fully, and for the first time, something other than professional irritation crossed her features. He stopped eating 9 days ago, Dr. Brilnara said quietly. We've tried every medical intervention available. Nutritional supplements, intravenous feeding, appetite stimulants. Nothing works. He won't eat, won't drink, won't respond to any caregiver who approaches him. If something doesn't change in the next 48 hours... She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Tamsin felt the familiar weight settle into her chest, the one that always showed up when people handed her their last hope wrapped in fur or scales or feathers and said please. Why me? She asked. I'm a xenobiologist, not a miracle worker. And I'm definitely not a therapist. Your file indicates you've worked with traumatized predator species before. Earth lions, tigers, wolves, species known for complex social structures and strong trauma responses. The Ralmoth share similar characteristics. Dr. Brilnara's voice took on a slightly defensive edge. Also, you were the only specialist willing to come on such short notice. Ah, Tamsin smiled without humor. So I'm not your first choice. I'm your only choice. Does it matter? Honestly? No, it didn't. Tamsin had never needed to be someone's first choice to show up anyway. Can I see him? She asked. Dr. Brilnara touched a panel beside the door. It slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a long corridor lined with observation windows. Most of the rooms beyond were empty, dark, but at the far end, soft blue light spilled from one chamber. They walked in silence. Tamsin's heart rate picked up. It always did, that moment before meeting a new patient, not knowing what she'd find. And then they were there, standing before the window, and Tamsin forgot to breathe. The cub was small, smaller than she'd expected, about the size of a lion cub, maybe 20 kilos, curled into the farthest corner of the enclosure. His scales, because Ralmoth weren't furred, she remembered now, were obsidian black, catching the light in ways that made him look almost liquid. A mane of quills ran from his head down his spine, each one tipped with a bioluminescent node that should have glowed bright, but currently flickered dull and weak, like dying stars. But it was his eyes that destroyed her. Amber, huge, luminous even in their dimness. And so empty. His name is Moth, Dr. Brilnara said softly, and Tamsin noticed she'd dropped the clinical tone entirely. The full name is unpronounceable for most species, but that's the closest approximation. What happened to him? Poachers. The single word carried enough weight to crush planets. They found his family unit, mother, father, 2 siblings, in a protected reserve. Killed all of them. Moth was hidden in a den, too small to be worth the trouble. A ranger patrol found him 2 days later. Tamsin's hands curled into fists. She'd seen this before. Had worked with traumatized animals who'd watched their families die, who carried that weight in their eyes, in the way they moved, in the way they stopped moving. He watched, she said. Not a question. We believe so. The rangers said when they found him, he wouldn't leave the bodies. They had to sedate him to transport him here. Tamsin pressed closer to the window. Moth didn't react to the movement, didn't react to anything from what she could see. Just lay there, curled tight, trembling so faintly she almost missed it. Has anyone tried just sitting with him? Dr. Brilnara blinked, all 6 eyes in sequence, which Tamsin was starting to recognize as surprise. Sitting? Not interacting. Not trying to feed him or medicate him or fix him. Just being there. That's not a medical intervention. No, Tamsin agreed. It's not. She studied the cub for a long moment, watched the shallow rise and fall of his breathing, the occasional twitch of his quills, the way his claws, retractable, she noted, currently extended, dug slightly into the padded floor. This wasn't a medical problem. Not really. You couldn't cure grief with supplements. Couldn't stitch up trauma with surgical thread. Moth wasn't refusing to eat because he was sick. He was refusing to eat because he'd stopped believing in tomorrow. I need everyone out, Tamsin said. What? Out of the observation areas, off the monitoring feeds. Well, okay. Keep the vitals monitoring on. I'm not completely reckless. But I need everyone to stop watching him, stop studying him, stop treating him like a patient. Dr. Brilnara's voice went sharp. Absolutely not. That cub is too valuable. That cub is terrified. Tamsin turned to face the doctor fully. Every time someone walks past, every time a monitor beeps, every time a door opens, he's back there with the poachers, waiting for the next bad thing. You want to help him? Stop making him perform his trauma for an audience. A long silence stretched between them. Tamsin could practically see the doctor's considerable brain working through the logic, fighting against protocol and procedure, and probably a dozen regulations about xenobiological care. Finally, Dr. Brilnara's shoulders dropped. 48 hours, she said. After that, we'll have to resume intervention protocols, with or without your cooperation. Fair enough. The doctor pulled up a holographic interface, fingers flying across controls Tamsin couldn't follow. I'm clearing the observation schedule and muting non-critical alerts, but I'm keeping vitals monitoring active, and if his condition deteriorates, you'll know immediately, and you can drag me out by my ears. Got it. Dr. Brilnara gave her a long look, all 6 eyes focused with unsettling intensity, then nodded. The access code is 4829. Try not to get yourself killed. Juvenile Ralmoth may look fragile, but those claws can shred Duraplast. Noted. The doctor left. Her footsteps echoed down the corridor, then faded entirely, leaving Tamsin alone with the soft hum of life support systems and the weight of a decision she was absolutely not qualified to make. She stood at the window for another minute, gathering herself. Then she punched in the access code and stepped through the door. The enclosure smelled different from the rest of the station. Less sterile, more organic. They'd tried to make it comfortable, she saw. Soft flooring, temperature regulation, even some artificial plants in the corners that were supposed to mimic Ashmaran's native vegetation. Adequate, but ultimately meaningless. A cage was still a cage, no matter how nice the decorations. Moth didn't look up when she entered. Didn't react at all, actually, which was somehow worse than if he'd hissed or growled or shown any sign of awareness. Tamsin moved slowly, telegraphing every motion, and lowered herself to the floor about 3 meters away from the cub. Not close enough to threaten. Not far enough to be indifferent. Just there. She sat cross-legged, let her hands rest loose in her lap, and waited. Time did what it always did when you weren't looking at a clock. It stretched and compressed and lost all meaning. Tamsin's legs went numb around the hour mark. Her back started complaining around hour 2. By hour 3, She was seriously reconsidering every life choice that had led to this moment. The intercom crackled once, Dr. Brilnara checking in, probably. But Tamsin ignored it. After a moment, it went silent. Moth still hadn't moved, still hadn't acknowledged her presence. But something had shifted, some infinitesimal change in the quality of his stillness. He was listening. Tamsin kept her breathing steady, her posture relaxed. She'd learned this technique working with traumatized wolves in the Canadian rewilding program. Predators were wired to detect threat, to read body language like a language they'd spoken since birth. The fastest way to earn trust was to become boring, predictable, safe. So she sat, and sat, and sat some more. Her stomach growled, loudly, embarrassingly, and she almost laughed. When was the last time she'd eaten? Before hypersleep? That was how many hours ago? Math was hard when you were tired and uncomfortable, and emotionally invested in a tiny predator who was absolutely determined to die in the saddest possible way. "I'm starving," she said quietly, more to break the silence than anything. "You probably are too. But I get it. Food feels like admitting you're going to keep going. And right now, that probably feels impossible." Moth's ear, small, tufted, surprisingly delicate, twitched. Tamsin's breath caught. There. That was something. Small, but something. She settled back against the wall, getting more comfortable. This was going to take a while. "I worked with a wolf once," she continued, keeping her voice low and even. "Found her at an illegal breeding facility, kept in a cage about a quarter this size. She'd been there for 3 years. 3 years, and she'd forgotten what pack felt like. What running felt like. What being anything other than afraid felt like." The ear twitched again. Everyone said she was too far gone, too traumatized, that the kindest thing would be to let her go peacefully. Tamsin paused. "But here's what I've learned about giving up. It's really easy to do when it's not your life on the line, when you get to walk away after and feel noble about making the hard choice." She shifted position, grimacing as blood flow returned to her legs in pins and needles. That wolf took 18 months before she'd eat without someone watching. 2 years before she'd let anyone touch her. 3 years before she trusted enough to sleep without one eye open. Tamsin smiled, remembering. Last I heard, she was running a pack in the Montana wilderness, teaching her pups to hunt elk. Stubborn thing. Moth's quills flickered, barely, just a momentary brightening of those bioluminescent tips. And then, so slowly she almost missed it, he turned his head. Not much. Maybe 10 degrees. Just enough that one amber eye could see her clearly. Their gazes met. Tamsin didn't smile, didn't move, didn't do anything that might break the moment. She just looked back at him, letting him see her, really see her, and hoped he found something worth trusting. "Hey there," she said softly. "I'm Tamsin, and I'm not going anywhere." The eye blinked once, slow, deliberate. Then Moth turned away again, curling back into his tight ball. But his quills stayed lit. Dim, but steady. And Tamsin knew with absolute certainty that she'd just been given a gift. He'd let her stay. Hour 6 found Tamsin with a spectacular headache, a numb rear end, and exactly 0 progress beyond that single moment of eye contact. Worth it, though. She'd dozed off somewhere around hour 5, not intentionally, but her body had apparently decided consciousness was optional, and woke to find Moth watching her. Not with curiosity, exactly. More like he was trying to figure out if she was a threat or just incredibly stupid. Probably both, if she was being honest. Morning? She murmured, not moving from her slumped position against the wall. Or afternoon, or whatever passes for time in a windowless room. Moth blinked slowly, then looked away. Progress. The intercom crackled. Your vital signs indicate you fell asleep. Dr. Brill Nara's voice carried a note of disapproval that transcended species barriers. That was inadvisable. Noted, Tamsin said, rolling her shoulders. Everything hurt. Any change in his vitals? A pause. Heart rate elevated slightly when you moved, otherwise stable. So he's aware of me. Awareness isn't eating. Baby steps, Doc? Tamsin pushed herself upright, grimacing. Rome wasn't built in a day, and traumatized predators don't recover in 6 hours. Another pause, longer this time. Then, there's a meal pack outside the door. For you, not the patient. Try to maintain your own health while you're busy ignoring mine. The intercom clicked off before Tamsin could respond. She smiled despite herself. Underneath all that clinical disapproval, Dr. Brill Nara was worried. Not just about Moth, about her too. Tamsin stood slowly, making every movement deliberate and unthreatening. Moth's eyes tracked her path to the door, those amber orbs following with laser focus. She retrieved the meal pack, some kind of nutrient paste that claimed to be savory protein blend, but looked like beige despair, and returned to her spot. As she settled back down, an idea struck her. Ridiculous, potentially stupid, the kind of thing that made perfect sense at hour 6 of sitting on a floor with a dying predator cub. She looked at Moth. Really looked. He was watching her with that same intense focus. But something else lurked behind it now. Not trust, not yet, but something adjacent to it. Interest, maybe. You know what your problem is? Tamsin said conversationally, tearing open the meal pack. Well, besides the obvious trauma and grief and loss, your problem is you don't remember how to be alive. Moth's ears swiveled toward her voice. See, when you're that young, and you are young, I can tell, you learn everything from watching. How to hunt, how to play, how to eat. She paused, an idea crystallizing into something solid. How to know what's safe. She pulled out the second meal pack, the one meant for Moth, left by some well-meaning attendant who'd apparently missed the memo about him refusing food. It was different from hers, obviously. Synthesized protein designed to match Ralmoth dietary requirements, which meant it probably tasted like something that had been alive recently. Tamsin unsealed it. The smell hit her immediately. Raw, metallic, absolutely not designed for human consumption. Perfect. You want to know a secret? She said, keeping her tone light and casual. I'm starving, absolutely famished. And this, she gestured with the predator meal pack, this looks amazing. From the observation room, she heard a muffled sound that might have been Dr. Brill Nara choking. Tamsin ignored it. She scooped a small amount onto her fingers, brought it to her mouth, and made a show of eating it. Chewing, swallowing, the whole performance. In reality, she was pressing the protein against her cheek, manipulating it with her tongue to make it look like she was eating, then discreetly spitting it into the waste receptacle she'd positioned beside her while pretending to stretch. But Moth didn't know that. His entire body had gone still. Not the frozen stillness of fear, but the focused stillness of attention. Tamsin hummed, really selling it. Oh, that's good. That's really good. She scooped more, repeated the performance. You have excellent taste, my friend. Whoever designed this meal really knew what they were doing. Moth's quills brightened slightly. Tamsin kept going, narrating between bites. Nice texture, too. Good protein content. I can taste the The very nutritious elements. Top quality stuff. The intercom crackled urgently. What are you doing? That food isn't formulated for human digestive systems. You could... Tamsin reached over and muted it. She scooped another helping, this time making satisfied sounds that were only slightly exaggerated. In her peripheral vision, she saw Moth uncurl. Just a fraction, just enough to get a better view. His nose twitched. You know what the best part is? Tamsin continued, really committing to the bit now. It's that it's safe. Nobody's going to hurt you for eating this. Nobody's going to take it away. It's just food, just fuel, just what you need to keep going. She placed a small portion on the floor between them, close enough to Moth that he could reach it, far enough that he'd have to make a choice to come get it. Then she went back to her own meal, pretending not to care whether he took it or not. Minutes crawled by. Tamsin kept up the performance, sneaking glances at Moth through her eyelashes, watching for any sign of movement. His whiskers quivered. Then, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, he stretched forward, not standing, not even really moving, just extending. One paw, then another. Centimeter by centimeter, Moth crept toward the food. His belly stayed low to the ground, his quills flat against his spine. Classic predator stalking behavior, except instead of hunting prey, he was hunting survival. Tamsin barely breathed. She kept her eyes on her own meal, kept her posture relaxed, gave him no reason to retreat. Moth reached the food, sniffed it. Once, twice. His tongue darted out, quick, testing, and touched the protein. Tamsin's heart hammered so loud she was certain he could hear it. Then Moth took a bite. Small, hesitant, but real. He chewed slowly, like he'd forgotten how, his eyes never leaving Tamsin. She smiled, gentle, encouraging, and took another bite of her own meal. See? Not so bad, right? Moth swallowed, considered, then took another bite, then another. By the time he'd finished the small portion, his quills were glowing, steady, and bright, and Tamsin had successfully concealed about half a meal pack's worth of protein in the waste receptacle, while maintaining the illusion of enthusiastic consumption. She slumped back against the wall, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical discomfort. Moth looked at her. Really looked at her. Then he made a sound. Soft, questioning, somewhere between a chirp and a growl. More? Tamsin guessed. Another sound, slightly more insistent. She laughed quietly, pulling out another portion. All right, but this time, I think you can handle it on your own, yeah? She placed it closer to him, still giving him space, but not as much. Moth hesitated for only a moment before eating. This time, he didn't watch her the whole time. This time, he just ate. When he finished, his sides were heaving with something that might have been exhaustion, or might have been the first full breath he'd taken in 9 days. Tamsin gathered the empty containers, stood slowly, and moved toward the door. Behind her, she heard a small sound. She turned. Moth had lifted his head fully, those amber eyes bright and clear. I'll be back, she promised. You're not alone anymore. She wasn't sure if he understood the words, but when his quills pulsed once, bright and strong, she thought maybe he understood the meaning. As the door sealed behind her, Dr. Brilnara stood waiting in the corridor, all 6 eyes wide with something that might have been respect. He ate, the doctor said quietly. Yeah, Tamsin replied, her voice rough. He did. That was unorthodox. That was necessary. Tamsin met the doctor's gaze steadily. Now we just have to keep him going. Dr. Brilnara nodded slowly. You should rest, and possibly see medical about whatever you just consumed. I didn't actually eat it, Tamsin admitted. I'm weird, not suicidal. A sound that might have been a laugh echoed from the Quellen. Then you're smarter than you look. I get that a lot. As Tamsin walked away, her legs shaky and her head spinning with exhaustion, she allowed herself one moment of victory. One meal down. A lifetime to go. 3 weeks later, Tamsin woke to find Moth sleeping against her leg. Not on her, the cub still had boundaries. And honestly, so did she. But close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his scales, the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. Progress looked like this. Small, incremental, absolutely terrifying in its fragility. He'd been eating, regularly for 2 weeks now. Still wouldn't touch food unless Tamsin was present. Still mimicked her eating patterns like he was following some kind of manual only she could provide. But he ate, gained weight, started moving around the enclosure with something approaching curiosity instead of despair. His quills glowed brighter now, not constantly, but in flickering patterns that Dr. Brilnara assured her indicated improving health. Ralmoth quills were tied to emotional and physical well-being, apparently. Dull meant dying. Bright meant thriving. Moth was somewhere in between, which felt about right. Tamsin shifted carefully, trying not to wake him. Her datapad sat on the floor nearby. She'd been reviewing Moth's case files the night before, falling asleep somewhere between page 30 and 31 of incident reports. Something had been nagging at her, something that didn't add up. She pulled up the files again, scrolling through with one hand while the other rested near Moth, close enough to feel connected but not touching. The incident report from the rangers who'd found him was straightforward enough. Poachers, illegal kill, family unit eliminated, lone survivor recovered. But then there were the older reports. Security logs from the conservation zone, patrol patterns, GPS data. Tamsin frowned, cross-referencing timestamps. The poachers had hit the den at exactly the right moment, when the adult Ralmoth would be away hunting, when only Moth and his siblings would be home. That kind of timing wasn't luck. That was information. Her stomach dropped. She pulled up more files, going back months. Every poaching incident in this sector, every close call, every time rangers had arrived just too late, a pattern emerged. Not obvious. Whoever was behind this was careful. But there, small details. Times that shouldn't have aligned but did. Routes that shouldn't have been known but were. Someone with access to conservation data. Someone on the inside. "Oh no," Tamsin whispered. Moth stirred, making a questioning sound. "It's okay," she said automatically, her mind racing. "Go back to sleep." But it wasn't okay. If someone on this station had fed information to poachers once, they could do it again. And Moth, the last surviving cub of a functionally extinct species, now recovering and gaining value every day, would be exactly the kind of target they'd want. She needed to talk to Dr. Brilnara. Now. Tamsin extracted herself carefully from Moth's vicinity, leaving a protein pack within easy reach. He'd started eating on his own in the last few days, small amounts, and only when she was nearby. But still, he'd be okay for a few minutes. She hoped. Dr. Brilnara's office was 3 decks up, tucked into a corner that suggested the station's designers had considered medical administration an afterthought. Tamsin hit the door chime twice, bouncing on her heels with nervous energy. "Enter." The doctor looked up from a holographic display, showing what appeared to be cellular scans. All 6 eyes focused on Tamsin with varying degrees of attention. "It's 0400 hours. This had better be important. Someone on this station tipped off the poachers." Dr. Brilnara went very still. "Explain." Tamsin pulled up her datapad, forwarding the files. I've been reviewing the incident reports. The timing was too perfect. The location too precise. Poachers don't just stumble onto protected dens in the middle of nowhere. Someone told them exactly when and where to strike. The doctor's fingers flew across her interface, pulling up the same files, cross-referencing with what appeared to be station personnel records. Her expression, or what Tamsin could read of it, grew darker with each passing second. You're certain? Certain enough to be worried. And if I'm right, Moth is still in danger. He's the only survivor. He's gaining value every day. And whoever sold out his family the first time would have significant motivation to finish the job. Dr. Brill Nara finished the thought, her voice tight, or to arrange his acquisition through less violent means. They stared at each other across the desk. I've been monitoring station communications, the doctor said slowly. Nothing concrete, but Administrator Grenleck has been evasive lately, accessing files he shouldn't need, making encrypted calls during off hours. Grenleck, Tamsin tested the name. He handles station logistics and conservation transport schedules and security protocols, and Dr. Brill Nara's voice went flat. He would have had access to the patrol data that preceded every poaching incident in this sector. We need proof. We need to protect that cub. Both true, both urgent, both potentially incompatible with each other. Tamsin paced the small office, thinking, what if we give Grenleck something to chase? False information about moving Moth to a sanctuary. If he takes the bait, tries to contact off-world buyers or mercenaries, we'll have evidence. Dr. Brill Nara nodded slowly. Risky. If we're wrong about him, then nobody gets hurt. But if we're right and do nothing, Moth stays a target. Tamsin stopped pacing. I've spent 3 weeks teaching him to trust again, to eat again, to believe the universe isn't entirely made of teeth and claws. I'm not letting some corrupt bureaucrat undo that. Something shifted in Dr. Brill Nara's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of someone just as stubborn as she was. I'll leak the false information through official channels, the doctor said. Make it look like a routine sanctuary transfer request. We'll monitor Grenleck's communications and see if he bites. And in the meantime, I keep Moth safe. Can you? Not a challenge. A genuine question. If this escalates, if someone tries to take him, they'll have to go through me first. Tamsin said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because it was. Doctor. Brill Nara studied her for a long moment. Then she stood, all 4 arms moving in what Tamsin had learned to recognize as determined purpose. I'll begin preparations immediately. You should return to the cub. If he wakes and you're not there. Yeah. Tamsin was already moving toward the door. He doesn't handle abandonment well. She made it halfway back to Medical Bay before the guilt hit. She'd have to prepare Moth to leave. Eventually. Soon, probably. Even if they caught whoever was selling information, even if they secured the station, the end game was always going to be the same. Moth needed to go back to the wild, to learn to be what he was meant to be, which meant teaching him he didn't need her. The thought made her chest ache in ways that had nothing to do with physical discomfort. When she returned to the enclosure, Moth was awake and pacing. The anxious kind of pacing that meant he'd noticed her absence. The second the door opened, his quills flared bright, and he rushed toward her, stopping just short of actual contact. A chirp. Insistent. Worried. I know, Tamsin said softly, sinking to the floor. I'm sorry. I had to take care of something. Moth pressed his forehead against her knee, the closest thing to physical affection he'd offered yet. His quills dimmed to a soft glow, the tension draining from his small body. Tamsin rested her hand on his head, feeling the smooth coolness of his scales, the faint vibration of a sound too low for human ears. "You're going to be okay," she promised. "I'm going to make sure of it." Moth made a sound that might have been agreement, or might have been, "I'll believe it when I see it." Fair enough. The intercom crackled. Security channel, which was unusual. "All personnel be advised. Administrator Grenleck has been detained for questioning regarding unauthorized communications. Medical Bay is on lockdown protocol until further notice." Tamsin and Moth both looked toward the speaker. "Well," Tamsin said quietly. "That was fast." Moth tilted his head, questioning. "It means you're safe." She scratched behind his ear, earning a surprised purr. "It means the bad guys don't win this time." But even as she said it, sitting on the floor with a traumatized predator cub who'd learned to trust her through nothing more than showing up and pretending to eat terrible food, Tamsin knew the hard part was still coming. Because winning looked different depending on who you asked. For Moth, winning meant going home, meant learning to hunt, to run, to be wild and free and everything his species was meant to be. For Tamsin, winning meant teaching him all of that, then letting him go. She'd known that from the start, had accepted it even, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two very different things. Moth nudged her hand, demanding more attention. Tamsin smiled despite the ache in her chest. All right. Patience was never your strong suit, was it?" Outside the enclosure, the A station hummed with activity. Security procedures, interrogations, the machinery of justice grinding slowly forward. Inside, a human and a predator cub sat together in the quiet, both of them trying to figure out how to be okay. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't finished. But for now, for this moment, it was enough. The sanctuary transport arrived on a morning that felt too bright for goodbyes. Tamsin had spent the last 2 weeks preparing Moth for this, gradually reducing her eating performances, encouraging him to hunt holographic prey in the training simulator, teaching him everything a young Ralmoth needed to know without actually being a Ralmoth herself, which was to say, she'd done her best and hoped it was good enough. He'd grown in those weeks, not just physically, though he'd gained a healthy amount of weight, his scales glossier, his quills brighter. But in confidence. He played now, pounced on things that didn't need pouncing, made sounds that were closer to joy than fear. But he still looked to her for approval, still waited for her to eat before he felt safe enough to do the same, still curled up against her leg when he slept. And that was the problem. "She's here," Dr. Brill Nara said softly from the doorway. Tamsin took a breath. "Right. Okay. Let's do this." Nyala entered the enclosure like she belonged there, confident, unhurried, radiating the kind of calm competence that came from decades of working with dangerous animals. She was Matherian, which meant she stood nearly 2 meters tall, with deep bronze skin and the kind of weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors under a harsh sun. Moth, who'd been playing with the enrichment toy, froze at the sight of her. "Easy," Tamsin murmured. "She's safe, I promise." Nala crouched slowly, making herself smaller. "Hello, little one." Her voice was surprisingly gentle for someone so intimidating. "I've heard much about you." Moth's quills flattened, nervous, uncertain. He pressed against Tamsin's side. "He's anxious around new people," Tamsin said quietly. "It took him 2 days to let me within 3 meters." Understandable, given what he's survived. Nayla pulled out a small container from her pack. May I? At Tamsin's nod, she opened it. The scent of fresh meat, actual meat, not synthesized protein, filled the enclosure. Moth's nose twitched with interest, despite his fear. Nyala placed a small piece on the ground, then backed away. I run the Ashmaran Conservation Zone. 80 square kilometers of protected wilderness. 6 other Ralmoth cubs, all rescued from similar circumstances. None quite as young as you, though. Moth crept forward, sniffed the offering, then looked back at Tamsin. She smiled, even though it hurt. It's okay. You can trust her. He ate. Small bites, cautious, but he ate without needing her to pretend first. Nala caught Tamsin's eye, nodded slightly. Approval? Recognition? Maybe both. You did remarkable work with him, Nala said. Most specialists would have focused on medical intervention. You focused on emotional healing. Yeah, well, Tamsin shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. Turns out, trauma isn't a medical condition. Who knew? More people should. Nyala stood, brushing off her pants. The sanctuary is ready whenever he is. We have the enclosure prepared. Larger space, natural elements, gradual introduction to the other cubs. He'll be well cared for. I know. Tamsin did know. She'd reviewed Nyala's credentials, inspected holograms of the facility, confirmed everything 6 times over. This was the best possible outcome. So why did it feel like she was ripping her own heart out? When? She asked. Tomorrow morning. Unless you need more time. No. Tamsin cut her off, maybe too quickly. No. We should do it before I lose my nerve. Nayla's expression softened. You can visit. The sanctuary allows monitored contact with... I can't. The words came out rougher than intended. I can't do halfway. Either I'm his person, or I'm not. And if he's going to learn to be wild, he needs to not be waiting for me to show up. Understanding flickered across Nala's face. She'd done this before, Tamsin realized, had this exact conversation with probably dozens of well-meaning humans who'd gotten too attached. Then we'll make tomorrow count, Nala said simply. After she left, Tamsin sat with Moth in the quiet. He'd returned to his toy, pouncing and batting at it with increasing enthusiasm. Every few minutes, he'd look over to make sure she was still there, still watching. Want to learn something new? Tamsin asked. Moth's ears perked up. She activated the training simulator, a holographic environment that could mimic Ashmaran's terrain. Trees materialized around them, dense undergrowth, the filtered light of a planet she'd never actually visited. This is home, she said. Well, your home, where you're supposed to be. Moth approached the nearest holographic tree, sniffed it, then looked disappointed when it didn't smell right. Tamsin laughed despite herself. Okay, so the technology isn't perfect, but work with me here. She activated a prey simulation, something small and quick, darting between the digital undergrowth. Moth's entire body went tense, predator instincts kicking in. See that? Tamsin pointed. That's food. Real food. The kind you have to catch yourself. Moth crouched, his movements suddenly fluid and graceful. He'd never seen prey before, not really, but his body knew what to do anyway. Genetic memory, probably. The accumulated knowledge of thousands of years of evolution. He pounced, missed. The holographic prey darted away. Moth looked at Tamsin, clearly embarrassed. Again, she encouraged. You've got this. They spent the next hour like that. Moth learning to stalk, to time his jumps, to use his claws properly. He was a natural, of course. Predators usually were, once you gave them the chance. By the end, He'd successfully caught 3 holographic targets and was looking insufferably pleased with himself. "See?" Tamsin ruffled his quills. "You don't need me for this. You've got everything you need already built in." Moth made a sound that might have been disagreement. "You do," she insisted. "You're strong, smart, capable. You're going to thrive out there." He pressed against her side, and Tamsin wrapped an arm around him, memorizing the moment. The weight of him, the warmth, the soft glow of his quills against her skin. "I'm going to miss you," she whispered, "but that's okay. Missing someone means they mattered, means they were worth knowing." Moth's purr rumbled through both of them. That night, Tamsin didn't sleep, just sat with Moth, watching him breathe, occasionally offering food that he now ate without needing her demonstration first. Progress looked like this: a cub who could eat alone, hunt alone, exist alone. Progress meant she'd succeeded. Morning came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Nayela arrived with a transport crate, large, comfortable, designed for minimal stress. Moth took one look at it and pressed against Tamsin's legs. "I know," she said quietly, "but you have to go. You have to learn to be what you're supposed to be." She walked him to the crate slowly, every step feeling like pulling against gravity. At the entrance, Moth stopped, looked back at her with those huge amber eyes. Tamsin knelt, pressed her forehead to his, feeling his quills pulse against her skin. "You're going to be amazing," she whispered. "You're going to run and hunt and play with other cubs who understand you better than I ever could. And someday, maybe you'll have cubs of your own, and you'll teach them everything your family should have taught you." Moth made a small sound. Not quite a cry, not quite a question. "No, I'm not coming with you." Tamsin's voice cracked. "But that's okay. You don't need me to pretend anymore." She guided him into the crate with gentle pressure. He went reluctantly, still watching her, still hoping she'd change her mind. The door sealed, transport engaged. And then he was gone, leaving Tamsin alone in an enclosure that suddenly felt cavernous. Dr. Brilnara appeared beside her. "You did well." "Doesn't feel like it." "It never does." 6 months passed. Tamsin took another assignment, an injured Quellen Apex flyer on a station 3 systems away. Another impossible case, another last resort. She was getting good at those. The message came through on a regular afternoon, flagged as personal correspondence from Nayla. Tamsin almost didn't open it, then did anyway, because she was apparently a glutton for emotional punishment. Video file. She hit play. Ashmaran wilderness filled the screen. Real wilderness this time, not holographic. And there was Moth, except he wasn't Moth anymore. He was bigger, stronger, his scales gleaming in natural sunlight, his quills bright and healthy. He was teaching. A smaller cub, maybe 3 months old, terrified and refusing. Food sat in front of him, and Moth, patient and calm, was eating slowly, demonstrating, showing the smaller cub that food was safe. Exactly the way Tamsin had shown him. The camera zoomed in on Moth's face. Those amber eyes, no longer empty, no longer afraid, just alive. Tamsin watched the video 3 times, crying and laughing in equal measure. Her datapad pinged. New assignment request? Another impossible case. Another animal that everyone else had given up on. She accepted it without reading the details. "All right, universe," she said to the empty room, wiping her eyes and pulling up the transport schedules. "Who's next?" Outside her window, stars wheeled past, infinite and indifferent. But somewhere on Ashmaran, a predator cub who'd forgotten how to eat was teaching another traumatized survivor that pretending could save your life. And that, Tamsin thought, was the whole point. Humans had this strange gift, this stubborn, ridiculous ability to teach survival by faking it until someone else believed it was real. Not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the smartest, just the ones who showed up, sat down, and refused to let anyone suffer alone, even if it meant pretending to eat truly terrible food.